All right, welcome everybody to the November 5th regular council meeting for the city of Courtenay. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And on behalf of Courtenay Council, I'd like to acknowledge the death of 16 Valley community members in the period of January to August 2025 due to the unregulated toxic drug crisis, for a total of 227 deaths of Comox Valley community members since the public health emergency was first declared in 2016. And I believe in the latest numbers were across the province, I believe it's over 5 people per day are succumbing to the toxic drug supply that's out there. So again, our council agreed that we would talk about these numbers on a regular basis, so it's something that we never forget. On a positive, well, I'm not saying a positive note, moving along, we have our minutes from a regular council on October 15th. With any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept the October 15th minutes as presented. And then we have the Parks and Rec from October 16th, their advisory commission. And are there any errors or omissions on those? Seeing none, we'll accept those unanimously, and we'll move on to our special council minutes from October 22nd. And are there any error or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept those unanimously as well. And now we'll go into staff reports, and we'll start with the Courtenay cemetery fees, item 5.1.1. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garber.
Thanks. Through the mayor. Our corporate officer is going to, I believe, take us through the cemetery report and the recommendations.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief introduction to the staff report, and then we'll be available for questions. So the Courtenay Civic Cemetery it's a city asset that is not currently financially self-sustaining, and we're looking for direction from council on how to address the gap between revenue and operating expenses. The main issue is that the cemetery's fees and bylaw have not been updated since 2011, so it hasn't been keeping up with inflation. And at this point, there is quite a large annual gap. Since it's been so long, increasing fees by the rate of inflation will not close that gap. So we're bringing this to council to discuss options for what council would like to do. So you certainly can decide to continue to subsidize the cemetery. That is an option. Many municipal cemeteries are subsidized, but usually the goal is to reach financial self-sustainability. And we have several scenarios that you can look at and decide which you feel is most appropriate. There's a lot of information in the report. So we have our consultants here today. We have Richard Cook and Jennifer Thibert from Lees and Associates here to answer any questions. And of course, Adam Langenmeyer, our financial officer. And between the 4 of us, we should be able to answer your questions about the cemetery.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And our slides just on the Parks and Rec minutes still probably got missed on a thing. Perfect. There we go. And so with that, any questions? Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I guess my first question is if the the consideration, which on the outset I think is pretty rational. If what we're aiming for is not having a subsidy coming from city operations or taxation, why is there still a discrepancy in terms of what a resident versus a non-resident would be asked to pay if there's not a subsidy that's coming from from our taxes? I assume that's what the discrepancy would be related to.
Like the gap between operations and revenue?
Well, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Like, what is the rationale between having differing amounts for a resident versus a non-resident? If there's not a public subsidy, wouldn't all people be paying the full cost then? And therefore the rate would be the same whether you're a resident or not?
Right. So Jennifer might be able to provide more information about exactly how you calculate what's appropriate for a resident or a non-resident to pay. But that is intended to acknowledge that there is money coming from various taxpayer-funded sources, for example, for capital projects. That is technically a CVRD service, and those are the three areas that pay into it: Comox, Area B, and the city of Courtenay.
So resident would include those areas as well?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The resident fee includes all of those areas that pay into the CVRD service for capital projects.
Okay, I think that actually does answer my question then. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any particular questions. I just wanted to comment that we hear a lot of concerns about the high cost of living, and what we're actually talking about here today is the high cost of dying. And, you know, I recently had occasion to put an obituary in the local paper. It cost $750 for a couple of paragraphs. So I think the suggestions in this report are perfectly reasonable, and you know, it's not something where it's an everyday cost. It's obviously an exceptional circumstance. I think it's important to note that there are subsidies available for people who are indigent or who have circumstances that make it very difficult for them. And I know that it's really important to people that that they not become a burden on the public. And I've talked to people who, you know, want to know that there's money to bury them. I think the fact that so those considerations are in there makes sense, and happy to support the report. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I agree with most of what was just said, and I wanted to just confirm that the cost of cremation is relatively stable and not an issue.
The actual cost of cremation, that I am not sure about.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You're still not sure? Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to assume it's the same, and it's of course the competition, if you will, but it's the alternative to being buried. So yeah, there is a very affordable way to move on when you move on. So with that, I'll move option 1.
Okay, thanks for that. And it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? And motion carries. Next we have,
A second recommendation of council.
oh, yes. Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, I'll move the second recommendation, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak to it.
Okay, floor is yours.
Thanks. So this is directing staff to undertake a service level review. And this is where I'm assuming that we would come up with recommendations and make decisions around, for example, the future of casket burials, the need to acquire additional land, the capacity of the cemetery. Those sorts of issues will be resolved through that review process.
Yes, it is still a bit early to discuss whether we need more land at this point. We think we're going to start running out of land before 2060, which is still a few decades in the future, but it would certainly be appropriate for council to decide that you would prefer to focus on services and products that are not casket focused. And council could certainly decide that you are not interested in more land in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Mr. Corbett.
Thank you, through the mayor. I also wanted to just highlight, Mr. Shaw is here. We are listening very closely to council's direction for our 2026 financial planning process. And I think it's important that we come back to council. It won't likely be incorporated into the 2026 budget, but we've already made some operational changes that are referenced in the staff report. And our activities in support of this are not cost recovery. And then the facility, the area itself occupies a significant amount of work for operational services department. And so I think it's important that council is saying that they want to hear back on what we can do there, because all of the activities happen there. We have customers and people who experience that area. And I just wanted to highlight that. We've done some of that, but we want to make sure that council supports us looking at that level of service. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. And Councillor Hilling again.
Thanks, Mayor. Just on that note, I think the one area that I would hope we can discuss in that review process is the possibility of green burials. The report notes the growing popularity, and I think that we're going to get increased potential demand for that. And so I'm hoping the report will address that aspect. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hilling, for bringing that up. And Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering if, I know that we have a lot of public engagement that goes on in various projects, but I wonder if we've considered any kind of public engagement around future trends in terms of newcomers, in terms of people who may prefer burials or anything like that, where we could get some information from the public in terms of what the practices are out there or what we might anticipate for the future.
This would be a great one to ask our cemetery consultants, actually, because I know they do a lot of demographic research. So I'll ask them to chime in.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting us to speak to you today. We can certainly touch on that. We do actually in the report touch on this to a very small degree in our market analysis, because we discuss religious and ethnic distribution in your community. And you are definitely very correct in that different people, different faith have different needs. Muslims, for example, prefer a form of burial that is akin to green burial. And so there are definitely, it's very important to look at the demographic profile and the changes in that. Richard, do you want to comment on that as well?
Thanks, Jen. I'm not sure what else I can really add other than it's factored in. If there's more work that needs to be done, we can certainly look at those trends and fine tune what the community is likely to need, and to make sure those services are considered and provided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And-
thank you. Sorry,
and-
go ahead.
Sorry, my apologies. And one thing I can say is when we did look at your profile, the items of note are that the majority of your community currently identifies with some form of Christianity, with the largest group being Catholic. And in the ethnically, we have around an above average presence of Indigenous peoples and folks of Asian descent, and those there's often an associated faith of things like Hindu and Sikh, and they actually favor cremation as a form of interment. So this report touches on this very lightly, but this does tie in very closely to examining the diversification of your services that allow you to customize to those particular groups. So I would expect that to be part of future research in that area.
Okay, that's great. That's good to hear. And I do appreciate the knowledge and expertise that you folks have in terms of making those kind of predictions or on demographics. But I also think it's good not to assume either, and perhaps there is some opportunity for some feedback from the community around that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Moran. And I don't see any further questions or comments, but we do have the motion on the floor. So all those in favor? And any opposed? And motion carries. All right, next we have the corporate facility energy management update, and I'll pass it over. What's that? Oh, to our consultants online, Jennifer. And the other one, I think it was Richard, is vanished already. But Jennifer, you're free to go, and we'll continue on with our next item, 5.2.2, corporate facility energy management update, and I'll pass over to Janine.
Thanks, Mayor. So we'll be starting with the zero emission vehicle fleet transition plan. I'm pleased to present this plan for you this evening. And with me online, we have Greg Carley from GHD Consultants, who have been supporting the development of this plan. So we've got a little presentation we'll run through. Awesome. So the objectives of this project were to guide electrification of the City of Courtenay fleet and the building of the charging infrastructure to support that fleet. The goal of this is to meet our 2030 legislated greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and fulfill operational requirements. So the study was undertaken using the following methodology. We did an inventory of our existing fleet. We engaged with city staff. We did a scenario analysis and modeled a couple of outcomes. We summarized our findings, prepared a recommendation, and then aligned an implementation plan for council consideration. Hey, there we go. So this is a summary of our existing fleet. So we have 43 light duty vehicles, including things like light duty pickup trucks, cargo vans, SUVs. We have 14 medium duty, 1-ton trucks, bucket trucks, flat decks, small garbage trucks, 25 heavy duty vehicles, 20 pieces of equipment, and 9, I think now it's 10 existing electric vehicles. So the total vehicles that we're looking to replace are 102. Vehicles that do not consume fuel were not included as part of the study, as well as vehicles that are already electric. So this is a summary of our fleet fuel reduction goals. So we have 2 different targets, and we had a couple of different scenarios. One is to meet the provincial greenhouse gas reduction target, and the other is to meet the City of Courtenay OCP target. We're working with a couple of different baseline years and a couple of different fleet fuel volumes from those years. So you can see on this slide the maximum fleet fuel volume we're aiming for 2030. So we would like to burn no more than 105,000 liters of fuel in 2030 in our fleet overall, or 83,500 liters if we're working to meet our OCP target. So this is a summary of those analysis scenarios. The first scenario was business as usual. So all vehicles are replaced with equivalent gas or diesel vehicles. And I should clarify, this is like for like replacement, assuming no electrification. But to date, we have had some electric adoption in our fleet. Scenario 2 is to meet our provincial targets, meeting that fuel reduction guideline. And scenario 3 was meeting our OCP targets. So after the cost modeling, looking at the implications, this is a summary of where we landed. And so we can see that the total cost of ownership for the municipal fleet is cheaper in scenario 3, just because there's a less of an inflation factor applied. The fire fleet is more expensive. Those are bigger vehicles. And then our funding options. We are eligible for grant funding, both for scenario 2 or scenario 3. The main difference is the pace in which the targets are met, varying by 1 degree, or 1 year. So it's expected that we would meet the provincial targets by 2041, or a full fleet electrification by 2041 or 2040. And so With that in mind, the scenarios did end up being quite close, and it was recommended that we proceed to implement scenario 3 because of the cost savings and our ability to meet our OCP targets. So this is a summary of the vehicle charging infrastructure that's required at full build out of our electric fleet. So it's a summary of how many chargers are needed and which level of chargers. So in some cases, we have a level 2 charger, which typically charges the light duty vehicles. In other cases, we need level 3 chargers for medium and heavy duty vehicles. It's important to note on this slide that an electric service upgrade is required at our operations yard and our fire hall to support charging of the fleet once transitioned to electric. So our general implementation plan is to start by replacing fleet vehicles with electric vehicles in accordance with our proposed schedule in the capital plan, which really starts with light duty vehicles first. Those are most readily available in the market. They've been showing to perform reasonably well in our fleet already. And this will be a program that we are going to need to adapt and manage uncertainty as we go. And so what that might look like in practice is verifying our vehicle needs and requirements on an annual basis, conducting a market scan to see which electric vehicles are available in any given year, reviewing available rebates and grants, selecting vehicles that offer the best value to the city, and installing charging infrastructure at the selected parking locations. So this is a summary of the 5-year capital cost for vehicle replacements. So we have proposed a number of vehicles that will be transitioned to electric each year, the proposed budget for those vehicles. And we have a couple of categories. One is the light duty fleet budget, the other being the heavy duty fleet budget, fire department vehicles, and fire department heavy duty vehicles. The number of vehicles you see and the costs reflect that strategy where we focus on the light duty vehicles first, allowing the market to evolve and provide medium and heavy duty vehicles at a later date once they're more available and have demonstrated success in other jurisdictions. And this is a summary of the capital cost for charging infrastructure. So looking at where we'll need to install chargers, the number of chargers, and the costs required for those electric service upgrades at the fire hall and the operations yard. So with that, we have a couple of resolutions for consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much for the presentation, and I'll pass it over to Councillor McCall.
Thanks, Mayor. And yeah, thanks so much for this presentation. In reading it last week, it certainly strikes me as a really good news report when it comes to our transition away from fossil fuels. I wouldn't have, assumed when we put the targets in place for the OCP, I guess that was 6 years ago now, that we would have seen in such a short amount of time that the costs of doing the transition really have what is pretty minimal, well, actually a positive impact in the long run. So that was great to see. So I'm very much in support of what's laid out here. One question I did have, though, just with recent months, seeing both the federal and provincial government council the carbon tax and then the Clean BC program is under review, which I'm not quite sure what that means exactly in terms of rebate and grant funding in the long run. But how reliant is these costs on rebates, or does the operational cost savings really do make up for that additional cost at the purchase point?
In our analysis, we removed any rebates. So that's not factored in. The costs you see are the costs that we expect to incur.
Oh, okay. That's even better and surprising. Yeah, and then I guess my other comment would be just given like how much this has improved really in the last like 4 or 5 years, I would assume that you know, that the outlook would look better going forward, especially that electricity rates in BC are fairly stable, although now we've really seen fuel prices drop quite a bit in the last you know, 6 or 8 months. So yeah, reviewing it and looking at it on a regular basis seems, you know, pretty logical. But how are we looking at those inputs that have a lot of variable costs like fuel in the long-term picture? Like, I'm just imagining if we were to have done this analysis and only looked at the cost of fuel, say today, that we could have gotten a different number, and just wondering how we would avoid that if, you know, looking at this at a later date, I wouldn't want to see, yeah, a different approach used and maybe not really recognizing, yeah, that there's a lot of variation in the cost of fuel.
There is a variation in the cost of fuel, and there is a lot of uncertainty to manage around future prices of vehicles, future prices of electricity, availability. And so this is really a plan to reach our targets, but manage annually as we go through the municipal budgeting process, like we typically do. To meet our greenhouse gas reduction targets, we do have to reduce the amount of fuel that we use, and therefore we'll see less fuel that we purchase as well.
Great, thanks.
Excellent. And I guess maybe just as a quick follow-up to that, when fuel prices are utilized when you're coming up with your modeling, is it like picking a specific day, or are you looking at maybe like the last 6 months or last 12-month rolling average? So you have a, you know, a more less fluctuating or erratic fuel price.
Perhaps I'll invite Greg Carley to weigh in on that analysis and the way the fuel prices were considered in the development of the models.
Thanks.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here today with you all. Yeah, it is a tricky part, no question. So we do try to use published guidelines, federal, provincial guidelines on what fuel pricing and usage might look like, to the extent that those might be available. We also run some basic sensitivity analysis in the process, but I think the key is, as Jean was saying, like to look at this as this is a plan based on information we know today. This is a very much a changing area with all kinds of variables. So if you think of this as the guardrails to work within, and that regular analysis on your fleet, because your fleet needs may change as well over time. So it's really important to keep that process going. But we've tried to, you know, take some best guesses, but it's almost impossible to you know, put projections on what fuel costs and electricity costs for that matter will look like, and vehicle costs over time. So we do have to make some assumptions to run the analysis on it.
Excellent. And so what I heard is that you use an industry standard or practice, but is that picking a price or picking a average price? So like a price on a day. That was kind of my question.
It would be averaging pricing based on what you've historically had. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's not just whatever it was this one day. Perfect. Okay.
Correct.
Janine?
And I will note that the same assumptions for fuel price were made in each of those scenarios. And so it provides a baseline for comparison. But when we're looking at an implementation plan and predicting the costs in that sense, the fuel price doesn't play into that as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the amount of like the actual liters, that's the real number that is going to make the difference anyway. So I really appreciate that. I'll pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the report. I notice obviously the light duty vehicles are the priority, and there's rationale for that. I know that some of the large municipalities do have some of the heavy fire vehicles now, and I guess I'm wondering, I see there's, you know, nothing in the plan for the 5 years, but do we need to get into the queue to be able to access those vehicles? Like, when would those vehicles start to become introduced? I know it's super exciting to see those larger electric vehicles.
When we did our analysis based on fuel volumes, one of the vehicles that burned the most fuel was actually the street sweeper, just because it runs the most kilometers.
Right.
And the street sweeper is proposed for electrification in 2029, and that is a real strategic upgrade so we can meet the OCP targets. And the fire department fleet is tricky because those vehicles are responsible for response. So we want to be sure that we have reliable vehicles that can perform when we need to. And so given our relatively small municipality and we don't have as many reserve vehicles as maybe a larger municipality may, we wanted to delay the electrification of those vehicles until they demonstrate reliability. And furthermore, they require an electrical upgrade for the fire hall to be able to charge them. So it's really a limitation on building charging infrastructure and limitations of the technology being reliable.
Right. Thank you for that explanation.
Thanks, Councillor Moran. Mr. Corbett.
Through the mayor to council, thanks for the question, Councillor Moran. I'm really happy to say that through the production of this plan, we've been able to engage kind of across the organization, and the operational folks got a chance to fine tune some of these items. And then specifically with respect to the fire, Chief McDonald is with us or online, but you know, that's a kind of an exciting development on the fire side. And but I would echo Ms. Tazioli's conversation there. For us, we've been leading the way on kind of electrification of our fire tools. That was really exciting. And I think it's a good practice just to sort of learn from others. And so the timing of this plan, I think, would reflect that. Plus, we have a new facility that would be coming online on the east side, and hopefully we can look for some, you know, potential grant support or something to like maybe augment the potential for charging there later.
Yeah, excellent. And actually, that was one of my questions, is that, you know, I noticed throughout the reports talks about fire hall number 1, which is kind of cool that it's numbering it. But there wasn't, I couldn't find something that specifically talked about the infrastructure at fire hall number 2. So is the idea that when fire hall 2 is built, that infrastructure will be, that's something that's going to be thought about, or is that something that will come in a future plan? Mr. Davidson.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So we are taking an approach to include infrastructure for charging vehicles at the fire hall that is built into the price that was presented most recently to council. Timing for such will depend on operational rollout as determined by the fire department. So if they choose to station their electric vehicles at fire hall number 1, then of course that'll be the focus, and then fire hall number 2 will get the upgrades if they need an extra large service or level 2 or 3 charger as needed when that becomes necessary.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And Councillor Frisch.
Excuse me, thanks for the presentation. I just wanted some clarification on the fire department fleet as well. So, I mean, scenario 2 and 3 look like they're identical on the fire department side. And so you're recommending scenario 3, I believe. So are you recommending the full $18 million investment in that fire department fleet then? Is that, or is it actually slightly different than the table shows?
What we're recommending is table 6, the 5-year capital cost for vehicle replacements, which doesn't include any fire department vehicles. The cost analysis that was done earlier in the report is modeled cost, just to get an idea of what the full transition would cost, considering a few different scenarios. But what we're actually proposing is just that 5-year window outlined on table 6.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that.
All right, I don't see any further questions or comments. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And I know I'm still looking forward to a review of the all electric fleet that Comox and Courtenay has for our garbage trucks, And having traveled to a couple of different countries, it's kind of cool how other countries have basically the ice cream music playing with their garbage trucks as they go through town. Because I do see my neighbors still panicking when the garbage trucks arrive now that they're quiet. So, but really, this is an exciting plan. Thanks so much. And we'll move on to the 2026 MRDT tactical plan. Oh, did I miss one? Oh, the corporate facility. Yeah, sorry about that. So 5.2.2, the corporate facility energy management plan. And back over to Janine.
Thanks so much. So I'm happy to introduce our corporate facility energy management plan update. Joining us tonight is Emma Harrison from Prism Engineering. She'll be taking the lead on providing the presentation update on this item. So I'll pass it over to Emma.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right, and I can share my screen as well, I think, or is the presentation going to be brought up here? Perfect. Amazing. Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for that introduction, Janine. Yeah, here today to present a couple studies that have gone over the last year, and both of them are feeding into the corporate facilities energy management plan. So we can go to the first slide there. Yep, my name is Emma. I am an associate with Prism Engineering, and I've worked with Prism for about 3 years now on their energy team. I am an energy management engineer in training, and a little bit about Prism. So we help organizations achieve energy, climate, and asset renewal objectives. We have electrical, mechanical, and energy engineering teams, as well as sustainability teams, and that really allows us to provide holistic and comprehensive solutions to our clients, such as yourself. Next slide. Yeah, so today we're here to talk about the studies that will inform the corporate facilities energy management plan. But before that, we should set some project context here. So when we look at our total corporate facility emissions, that is made up of buildings as well as fleet and some other contracted services that you guys provide to the community. And so in 2007, which forms kind of our baseline year for any targets that you're setting, in 2007, your emissions were sitting at about 870 tons. And in 2024, those emissions have gone up over time. And now we're at an emissions level of about 1,170 tons. And of that, the emissions associated with your city facilities represent about 43% of that. And so on this graph here, you can see on the far left, yeah, so these columns are showing the emission levels from these different energy sources. And so the far left is your electricity column. It's the smallest because the emissions intensity of electricity in BC is quite low. We have a clean grid. And then next to it, by far your largest column is natural gas. And so that's the gas you're consuming to heat your buildings in the city. Yeah, next slide. So with that in mind, in order to tackle these emission sources, the city has set out to develop a corporate facilities energy management plan. And this plan really has 3 big goals. First is to support the planning of building upgrades and retrofits to the city facilities. Next big objective here is to meet the 2030 legislated greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. And finally, to fulfill operational requirements and improve building comfort, because we want to be considering those who are using the facilities, the community that's it's supporting. So that's also tied into an objective there. Next slide. And so to develop this plan, when Prism first joined the efforts about a year ago, step 1 was to take an inventory of the facilities and determine which sites we want to study, at what level do we want to study them, and what funding is available that we can go for that would maximize value to the city. And so this graph that we're looking at shows the proportion of portfolio emissions attributed to each site within the city's portfolio. And so in orange, we're seeing this group, your largest emitters, and that's accounting for about 80% of your city facility emissions. And so included in that list is Lewis Park Rec Center, Native Sons Hall, Public Works, Memorial Pool is another big one. Comox Valley Center for the Arts, Fire Hall, and Vancouver Island Regional Library. So 80% of your emissions are associated just with those few sites. Other large buildings would be Sid Williams, Florence Philibert, Link Youth Center, and you can kind of see at the bottom corner, there's these two small little boxes there. You can't even see the full name. So that would be City Hall and the Courtenay and District Museum. And those are big buildings, but they are fully electric. And so their emissions intensity is quite small. And so that kind of group of blue sites makes up another 10%. And the final piece of the pie, this remaining 10%, is attributed to smaller buildings. So park washrooms, storage facilities, as well as the electricity consumption associated with your pumping stations and your streetlights. Yeah, and I guess before we move to the next slide, kind of what we came to the conclusion of is that we would go through two studies side by side. And so one was a greenhouse gas pathway study, and that's funded by the Federation for Canadian Municipalities. And that focuses on the biggest, most complex sites. So everything in orange and blue was included in this pathway study with detailed audits associated with them. And then we also simultaneously have done BC Hydro energy audits, and that focused on your smaller buildings in that green box there to see what opportunities were there for your smaller facilities. Next slide, please. And so what does the auditing process look like? There's many steps involving many people. So first, we take a look at the buildings, kind of a bit of a desktop review, and that includes an energy analysis, which you can kind of see the results of that in the previous slide. But once we get our head into the building, it's important to also visit the sites and see what's going on in person. So Prism came and toured the buildings. We were joined by staff from Civic Properties and Operations, and we went through site by site to get a feel for what was going on and what the opportunities were. And in that, we also had the chance to talk with custodial staff, building occupants, building operators, and really gain some invaluable insight about the operations of these facilities and to discuss what are some opportunities and some challenges that we might see here. With that, we did some assessment. We looked at all the building systems. We identified opportunities to reduce energy and carbon, conducted some analysis to figure out, well, what kind of costs are we looking at and what kind of savings are we looking at? And once we had those results, we went back to staff and did a series of workshops to gather further feedback on those results and what the implementation of these could look like. And that feedback ultimately feeds into these final deliverables, which would be the carbon reduction pathway scenarios. I'll present that in just a minute. And then the reports and the recommendations that we put forward in those reports. Next slide, please. So speaking of the opportunities that we're putting forward, this slide is just to go over Prism's approach to identifying measures and opportunities. And so we have a 6-step process, but I'll kind of simplify it and say where we always begin is to look to optimize and improve our systems. So we just want to eliminate waste. We look with what the buildings have and say, is there quick wins? Is there low-hanging fruit, small investments that would offer quick results? And so that's where we always begin. And once we've optimized the systems in that way, we would look to capital investments that would recover heat, eliminate further waste, and then to implement some low carbon technology such as heat pumps. And once the buildings are brought to their highest potential, we would then look at renewable supply or other offsetting methods. And so we also did a solar assessment for the facilities as well. Next slide, please. And so before I present the pathway results, I'll just this a quick visual of some of those large facilities that we looked at, some big staples to the community. There was 11 sites in total, but these are just 4 of them. Next slide. Thank you. And so this is a key output from the pathway study that was funded by FCM. And so what are we looking at here? On this graph, the columns are the cost values. And so those are kind of the estimated annual capital spends associated with each pathway. And the lines are representing emission levels on a year-to-year basis. And so you have solid lines to show kind of how those emissions would vary with each pathway scenario. And the dotted lines are the targets, the provincially legislated targets that you would be trying to achieve with these scenarios. And so Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at on this graph. 3 scenarios were modeled for comparison purposes. The first is a business as usual, and this involves like for similar replacement of equipment when it approaches end of life. There are modest energy efficiency gains that are available there, but you can see that it doesn't quite hit those target marks because we're not making, we're not striving towards carbon reduction with those. It's just replacing equipment when needed. The second scenario, that's in blue, is a GHG emissions target scenario. And so for this one, we strive to align as closely with equipment renewal cycles as possible while achieving the emission reduction targets. And so you can notice that we do hit the 2030 and the 2050 targets in that scenario as well. And finally, it's the aggressive decarbonization scenario. And so this scenario expedites projects. So of just a few key projects that have high fuel saving potential. And that is in order to bring that curve down as quickly as possible and maximize the cumulative emission reduction over time. And so with that, you'll kind of notice there's some additional capital spending in the first 5 years. And that's really because we're expediting some of those key projects. Next slide, please. This table summarizes some of those key outputs from the different scenarios. And so, yeah, just for comparison purposes, if we look at capital costs there, presented with, first of all, kind of an average annual spend, as well as the total spend in the first 5 years of this pathway scenario. And so again, pathway 3 has that higher spend amount than pathway 2 because we're pushing some big projects ahead to achieve those emission savings. We can also look at kind of the equipment impact. So first would be the replacement timing. And I mentioned before, pathway 2 aligning with equipment end of life, whereas pathway 3 expedites a few where equipment would still have life in it. And then I also have a line here on performance monitoring and verification. And this is actually kind of a key consideration because what this is implying is with pathway 2, there is time between related projects that allows staff to monitor the energy consumption and these systems to say, is it achieving what we've set out to achieve? What can we learn from it? How might this help to adjust the course or our efforts or do something new because of what we've learned? And so that's kind of that key piece of monitoring and verification. And we have that in pathway 2, but in pathway 3, if we're crunching some of those timelines, sometimes there will be a bit of a compromise on the timing for that. Yeah, and then with emission targets, both pathway 2 and pathway 3 meet those targets you set out to meet. And then with funding options, what I want to say on this piece is that funding options are always changing. There's always new opportunities coming out or, shifting opportunities. And so while there are some available, and there will probably always be some available, it's kind of evolving and something that you'll need to be agile with. Yeah, next slide, please. And so kind of our last slide here is just to touch on these smaller facilities. And so we talked about the pathway scenarios, what we're looking at for those big facilities. But with the results of these additional audits we've done on the side, there's about 18 buildings included in that. And their savings are not shown in the pathway, but we estimate about an additional 30 tons of emission savings would be associated with these sites. And so in those pathway models, you'll notice that it kind of plateaus at about 80 tons, even when things are fully implemented. And then there would be an additional about 30 tons you could reduce even further with these facilities. Yeah, and that kind of brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Emma. Appreciate the presentation, and I'll pass it over to our councillor, starting with Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. Quick question about the economic side of it. I noticed one of the charts outlines the payback on some of the improvements that could be made. There were some grants available. And I guess what I'm wondering overall with pathway 2 is there a flip side, like an economic gain in the long run for the changes, savings in fuel, efficiencies in the equipment and so on? Or is it sort of maybe a little bit negligible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are seeing in our scenario modeling that there would be fuel savings associated with it. I think it will, it kind of depends on the project, whether there's a strong payback period or not. But those business cases would be improved with funding opportunities as well. So it kind of depends on the project really, and funding that's available to improve the business case.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all the hard work on it.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
I realize I probably have a very similar question to Councillor Frisch. I was just hoping that I know that with the vehicles, we obviously looked at the capital outlay and then we looked at operational savings and how they balance against each other. And I just didn't see that at all here, the operational savings. I know you said it depends on the projects, but are you able to provide any kind of sense of whether what the operational savings would be? Because that's clearly an important consideration with any investment.
I'm happy to provide an estimate. So for each of the buildings, we identified specific upgrade projects, and each of those upgrade projects, in some cases, have an opportunity to provide cost savings, and in some cases not. So for example, if we are trying to remove gas from our facilities, replacing that equipment is a cost, and we might actually incur an expense in higher electricity costs. In general, we can expect to see savings from efficiency-based projects, but it's less than 10% of the total project cost. So it's fairly low, and for that reason, the costs that we presented in Table 2 in the financial plan are just straight capital costs. They don't represent any operational savings. They also don't represent any potential external funding. They're simply the costs to do those projects.
Okay, so it sounds like there will be operational savings, but they haven't been quantified specifically and they haven't been built into the economic modeling that we're looking at.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, maybe I'll just quickly add. So those operational cost impacts, they have been analyzed. They're included in individual building reports and in the pathway summary report. Maybe not in the specific tables shown on this presentation, but they are included in the reports there for review associated with each pathway.
Yeah, and I think that's what Janine was saying, is it the project by project, but as an overall, what we saw through the slide deck doesn't necessarily reflect those numbers. So, and I guess my question, kind of going back to what I see here on slide 11, the large facilities pathway scenario, where it actually had the dollar amounts, and this might be a question for our staff as well. And I don't know if we want to go back to that slide just so the numbers are up, but it's the one that says large facilities. There we go, that one right there. So when we look at pathway number 2, it basically looks like, almost a $700,000 a year increase in cost. So if this was something that we'd be looking at, I'm assuming it's not contemplated in our current financial plan. So it'd be, so I'm actually looking maybe at our financial director, that if this is not something that we're currently contemplating, would this actually result in like a 2 to 3% increase if we're looking at that amount? And then when we're done with this work, so to speak, getting this pathway, we've completed the journey, as Mr. Shaw might say, would then that increase in taxation, that project kind of thing kind of fall away? And I'm getting nods, but maybe if you wouldn't mind speak to that a little bit, Mr. Legmar, just so I'm clear in my mind.
Nice to be here once again. You identified it correctly. These items before you are not in any financial plan approved by council. The cost would be in addition to the estimation of completing the plan over 5 years. You nailed it again, that you increase taxation to the projects. Once the projects are done, taxation drops because they're done.
Okay, yeah, just want to get that clarification. And then maybe to any staff member or even one of the consultants, when we look at the, where we are right now compared to even a year ago in terms of grants and those kinds of things, is I guess just trying to look to see, what kind of hope we might have or lack of that when we look at grants for some of these types of projects.
There are a number of grants available. So this study project is more than 80% funded by grants. And the small remainder is actually funded by another grant. So it's 100% funded by grants. And there is opportunity for additional grants when we get to the capital project phase. So often the grants are set up, some money dedicated to assessment, some money dedicated to capital projects. And so we would be in a kind of a new tier able to access that capital funds once this plan is complete. This is an update that we're presenting to council today, and we're looking for direction on which of the pathways you have the strongest interest in. Once we get that clarification, we'll align the capital plan. And so you can see in table 2, there are 2 different costs presented, one for pathway 2, one for pathway 3.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. I was just going to say that I'm really excited for this work. And even though, as the Mayor identified, this might be a one-time 2% increase in our taxes, I do feel like as people around the world might be realizing that climate change is kind of the most important thing. We might not be the largest as a municipality contributor, but we have to be a leader and do our best. So with that, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I do see Councillor McCollum still has a question or comment, but we'll pass over to Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the recommendation. So I just, I wanted to provide the commentary that I'm in agreement with the rationale used for proceeding with pathway 2. I think there is really it's difficult to quantify the value of performance monitoring, but I think it's a very important piece of doing this type of work. And I think that there's a reason to put some importance in that, and maybe not just proceed as quickly as possible. I also think that given that there are competing financial constraints in everything we do, that proceeding with the plan that emphasizes more doing upgrades at end of life rather than replacing equipment that's still working in order to meet these objectives is also worth consideration. One question I had, though, just in hearing that there could be grants that come available for capital funding, and grants are changing all the time, and it made me wonder, because I mean, pathway 3 looks like it's about 40% more of an investment in over the 5 years that we're looking at. So if there was significant grant funding that became available, and we have some of the years some bigger capital costs, if we would consider changing our timeline based on, say, a significant grant becoming available, or is once we've kind of put this in place, we look at the year and look at what's available? Like how would we manage that?
It's a good consideration, and perhaps that could be something that we build into our implementation plan when we present it to council for adoption, just to look at how to manage that uncertainty and make sure we can get the best value for the city.
Oh, fantastic. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm also in support of option 2, and I really appreciate all the work that's gone into mapping this out. And in terms of, while funding is never guaranteed, or grant options, I know that the Sustainable Municipal Buildings Fund, the Green Municipal Fund, is reopening in 2026 with expanded eligibility, and it allows up to 80% of project costs to be covered, 20% as a grant. And at a FCM meeting in September, visited a net zero operations center in Alberta, which was all like using ground source heat pumps, and it was the GMF grant that allowed them, after 20 years of saving up, it's a very small municipality, to finally put it over the top. So it's great to see them in action, hopefully, and also good to see their reopening next year in terms of trying to fund this. But anyway, appreciate that. We'll be supporting option 2.
Fantastic. And we have a motion on the table, and maybe one last clarifying question, because we are going to have a couple of budget meetings later in November. Is this something that would get folded into those discussions later this month, or is it something that might be a little bit further down the road?
Whichever pathway council supports will be included in the proposed budget for 2026.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. Councillor, I got a whole bunch of lights on this side. We'll start with Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. No issue with the recommendation. And this may be too early, but I'm just wondering if staff have had any opportunity to analyze the federal budget presented yesterday in terms of any good news on the environmental grant front.
It's really fresh news, so I haven't got a chance to get into the details yet. But I was happy to hear that there was funding dedicated to local infrastructure projects. And given that these are upgrades and retrofits to our buildings, that may count as an infrastructure project, but I think it's definitely too early to say.
Excellent. Hey, you'll probably get that same question every time it comes up. Mr. Carpet.
Thank you through the mayor. With respect to the implications of the budget, we spoke about it at senior leadership today. There will be a number of organizations that we're affiliated with, including FCM, UBCM. They're going to all have summaries of what's there. So we'll rely on those. And we just had a discussion at senior leadership about a potential memo to council. Stay tuned on that. Just would remind council, though, we have direction for 2026 financial plan. And so these items, although you're endorsing them, we will be discussing them as part of our program because we already have a capital budget that's in place. So again, prioritization and conversations in that regard. And then just the last thing I was going to say is that, I feel like I'm dating myself by saying triple bottom line. And so it's not just save money or reduce greenhouse gas. We all have multiple points of priority here, and the community plan has given us a really good area of focus to take this work forward. And council may also recall when the community plan came in 21, the big goal related to greenhouse gas and climate adaptation, the last two reports at our corporate level are designed exactly to address those issues, particularly the electrification, which is the biggest opportunity to move our community emissions profile.
All right, thanks so much for that. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thanks very much. And thanks, Emma, for presenting online, and Janine for your work on this. And we'll move on to 5.3.1, the 2026 MRDT Tactical Plan. And it says Adam Legemeyer here, but I also know that Tanya's up there. So should I just, if you want to turn okay. We're going to the podium. All right. And here comes the clicker.
Thank you.
Hopefully it works a little.
It wasn't working before?
I don't know. I'm sure it was working just fine.
Yeah.
All right. The floor is all yours.
Hello, me again. Yeah, it's Tanya from Experience Comox Valley. First, I just want to acknowledge that I'm grateful to be here today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. I will be going through the 2026 MRDT Tactical Plan. Just a brief overview, so I'll run through some of these slides pretty quickly to get to any questions you might have. 2026 is the final year of the 5-year MRDT business plan. One of our visions is that the Comox Valley's compelling uniqueness lies in the combination of diverse outdoor activities, rich culinary experiences, and a welcoming community atmosphere. So our strategic focus over the past few years has been articulating this uniqueness in a cohesive, charming, and organized way to ensure that our marketing activities align with it and are appealing to potential visitors. We have a tourism advisory committee that advises and reviews our annual plans, and they're there to represent the best interests of our region's communities, its businesses, and other interest holders. And we benefit by collaborating together as the Comox Valley region. Through strategic alignment of goals and objectives, we have better buying power, administrative efficiencies, and more. Our 2026 goals and objectives haven't changed drastically since 2025. We will continue to support sustainable tourism initiatives. We aim to increase revenue from visitation and generate leads for businesses, increase the competitiveness of the Comox Valley as a desired destination, improve the visitor experience, increase collaboration among tourism businesses, and amplify local tourism messaging. We do this by positioning our destination drivers, utilizing sustainable tourism practices, enhancing our brand communication and therefore brand awareness to our target audiences. We want to manage strategic growth and strengthen our, again, business and industry collaboration, and look to ongoing market research and adaptation in order to best utilize the resources and funds that we have. Our target markets also remain largely similar. However, we have refined them to better align with Destination Canada's new traveler segmentation program. So previously it was an Explorer quotient, but now Destination Canada has a new program which identifies 7 different traveler segments that are based on behavioral as well as psychographic characteristics. So motivations for travel, those types of things. For Comox Valley, the outdoor explorers and culture seekers align great with what we have here to offer, as well as the target markets that we want to reach and want to attract to our area, with a secondary target market of fun and sun families, being that the Comox Valley has such a great range of things to do for all ages, especially those multi-generational travelers. We will continue to do our always-on marketing, including our organic social media, so our Facebook and Instagram pages, which utilize user-generated content, post daily, responding to direct messages and comments and that kind of thing. We have our website, experiencecomoxvalley.ca, that will continue to be the main resource for information about Comox Valley, what to do, how to plan your trip here, as well as our events calendar and things like that. Residents and visitors can utilize while they are here in our community. 2026, we have included in our budget to do a content audit. Now that the website is a couple of years old, we do want to make sure that the content that's up there continues to be accurate, as well as on brand with our enhanced marketing messaging, and just keeping a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility throughout our messaging on the website. Google search ads will also continue to be utilized, and we continue to collect photography, video, and written content as assets that we can use in all of our marketing and online digital campaigns. Our campaigns largely look towards geographical and seasonal dispersion. So our biggest spend on our marketing campaigns continues to be in the fall and winter and spring seasons, whereas we turn off a lot of our marketing in the summer, knowing that we are already busy here in the summer each year. We will be utilizing various channels, including television, email marketing, paid social media, display, and third-party advertising, as well as looking at cross-network digital AI-driven channels. So that will be a little bit of a new dive for 2026 to see how we can utilize AI to be more proficient in targeting our audience through using AI to help us look at what's being engaged with and react more quickly to what's happening in the market to produce those ads to the right audience at the right time and on the right channels. We will also continue to work with our partnership marketing, including Destination BC sector consortiums that are listed there, as well as our partnership with the Comox Valley Airport, and potentially other strategic partnerships as they become available throughout the year. We look at some key target print ads and advertorials, as well as we produce our annual Experience Comox Valley guide, which continues to be a great print resource that's heavily utilized with the Visitor Center and Visitor Information Servicing. Travel, trade, and media relations will be increased a little bit next year. Not only will we be participating for the first time in the Calgary Outdoor and Adventure Travel Show, a little bit of a pilot, we're actually going to be traveling with other Vancouver Island communities, including Campbell River, Cowichan Valley, Vancouver Island North. Ucluelet, for example, will all be going to have a big presence of Vancouver Island at the Calgary Travel, Trade, and Outdoor Adventure Show to see what kind of a response we can get from the visitors there. It's a great opportunity to highlight our direct flight from Calgary to the Comox Valley and increase the awareness of that, so that residents in that area can, maybe if they didn't already know, they'll hopefully learn that the coast is closer than they think and might consider Comox Valley as a place to visit next. The other exciting thing happening in 2026, we have been chosen to host the Explore VI Travel, Trade and Media Show, which happens in the spring each year at a different community on Vancouver Island. So it's coming to Comox Valley, which is a great opportunity to showcase to regional tour operators live and in person what our valley has to offer. They get to go on a familiarization tour where we tour them around to some key attractions. They get to try, some local restaurants and hotspots, basically get to experience it for themselves, which makes a more compelling reason for them to include it in their travel itineraries in the future. We are also utilizing a new online platform called the Data Appeal for market research in 2026. This is a great platform that, again, utilizes AI to basically scrub over 300 different resources online to find things like customer satisfaction. So I can look at any attraction in our valley and see what customers are rating it. And that, like I said, AI will compile all the information, whether it's from Google reviews or Yelp or whatever it is people are using to review things, TripAdvisor, for instance. It's an opportunity to, again, see where not only travel satisfaction or visitor satisfaction is, but also we can share that with our local tourism businesses. And there's a bunch of other measures that we can see on there. I'm still kind of learning the platform. As far as industry development and engagement, we will continue on offering workshops and networking opportunities, working with our tourism advisory committee and local businesses and partners. We have an industry newsletter that goes out and communicates with businesses upcoming opportunities. We are looking to do a little bit more engagement for agritourism and examining ways that we can better support that sector in our region, as well as meaningfully engage with all of our communities, including the rural and Comox First Nation. For destination development, we continue to have our events and experiences grant program. There was 10 successful applicants in 2024 and 2025. So we would like to further refine and optimize that program moving into 2026, working with the Tourism Advisory Committee in order to do that. Our visitor center operates year-round and offers guides, maps, brochures, displays, and information. It's open Tuesdays to Saturdays, the majority of the year, and then 7 days a week in the summer. We have also partnered with the IHOS Gallery to do a new Indigenous art display on the back wall. It's looking beautiful, and we're really excited to host an industry networking engagement opportunity early in the new year to show that off. Our mobile visitor information kiosks will operate in the summer. We pick highly visible downtown locations in Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland, as well as select events and festivals, such as, farmers markets, in order to meet the people and visitors where they're at in the summer at our busiest time of year. We also will continue to support free supports for tourism businesses and organizations, such as our online business listings, events and festivals calendar, the social media amplification, so sharing what they put, as long as they're tagging Experience Comox Valley, we can easily share their messaging and what's going on. We allow them to use our images and videos for marketing and promotional purposes. Everything that we collect has third-party rights and is not only shared with the Destination BC Content Hub, but we can share it with any local businesses that want to use it for that. And then, of course, our visitor information resources. All right, so looking at the budget, couple of things just to note here. Our carry forward estimate is based on 6 months of 2025 collection. It does include the general MRDT as well as the online accommodation platforms. If you're wondering why that number is looking high. The estimated 2026 general MRDT revenue, based on the past few years of that increasing, we've projected it in our budget moving forward to be 450. So that's up from 400 in 2025 to 450. And for the first time ever, we actually know how much our Destination BC co-op marketing grant is going to be. Last year, they moved to a 2-year granting cycle. So in previous years, our budget, when we apply, we put what we've asked for from DBC, not knowing how much we're going to get. But this year, we know that our grant will continue to be $140,000. So that allows us to be a little bit more specific in what expenses we want to target for next year and start pre-planning a little earlier than normal, which is really great. About 2/3 of our total expenses are represented through marketing and visitor servicing, and then the remainder is destination development activities and admin. Of the marketing costs, so of that 358,000, approximately 70% of that is spent in the BC market and targeting those short haul visitors from Vancouver Island, Southern Vancouver Island, Lower Mainland, and Kelowna. And then the other 30% targets the Alberta market, specifically Calgary and Edmonton area, again, to align with those direct flight offerings that we have here. Once our 2025 actuals are known, we can then update the budget using any carry forward. If there's more marketing or destination development opportunities that we want to apply some funds towards, or to keep in a contingency, that will be typically that's discussed at the Tourism Advisory Committee. As I mentioned earlier, we are in the final year. 2026 will be the final year of the current 5-year business plan. So the other thing that's going to be going on is building a new 5-year MRDT plan. This plan will apply to 2027 to 2031. There is a recommendation to expand the boundary areas to include the other municipalities, so Village of Cumberland, Town of Comox, as well as the CVRD electoral areas, excluding Denman and Hornby Island, who continue to do their thing. In addition to it being collected here in the city of Courtenay. There's also a recommendation to look at increasing MRDT from 2 to 3%. We will be hosting a workshop, an engagement workshop on November 20th. The primary goal of this workshop will be to hear from local tourism businesses and other interest holders and partners that come to the workshop for what they think the priorities of the 10-year tourism strategy framework should be for inclusion in this 5-year plan. We will also be engaging one-on-one and small group conversations to help us determine these. We are going to be building an engage page for more broader feedback. And once we have the draft 5-year MRDT plan, that will be reviewed by the Tourism Advisory Committee as well as the local CAOs. And then after any adjustments are needed from that, it will go to hoteliers so that we can collect their signatures of support to be submitted to the province. So that's kind of the process there. Any questions?
Well, fantastic. That was a lot of information. And so maybe while I'm waiting for some lights to come on, it's great to see the plan on the MRDT expansion. And I noticed that you excluded Denman and Hornby, but I wondered about Mount Washington, which already has its MRDT. Would they be considered to be, folding it all together, or they'd still be separate?
Correct. Yeah. So one of the considerations is looking at a model where they would be included in the full regional MRDT. That obviously has not been determined yet. We are engaging with them to see what that would look like and what that could be.
And another question just on that online platform revenue, given the fact that in Courtenay, the number of short-term rentals is plummeted, I would, for lack of a better term, at this moment in time. Is that been factored in with the new provincial legislation around short-term rentals?
Like for a regional MRDT, you mean?
Well, no, just in for your 2026, there was one slide that kind of talked about the carry forward, what was happening next year. So
yeah, the OAP and the estimated expenses for that were done internally here. So I don't know if Adam.
I have the utmost confidence then. So thanks for those 2 quick questions, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Healy.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate all the good work and your thorough reports. My only issue is really the tactical plan related to affordable housing is pretty sparse. I know that's not your department, so I'm just curious if staff could comment on, we're expecting something in 2026 in that regard, and I just wonder what sort of what we can look forward to in terms of a more fulsome approach to actually starting to spend some of the funds that are being collected here. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Helene. And Mr. Garbutt, we'll start with, and then maybe Mr. Leggemeyer.
Thank you through the mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Helene. So there are 2 parallel and intertwined processes moving forward. One, the Development Services Department is working on a affordable housing action plan, and then the region is formulating itself into what it's going to be in terms of that housing entity. What we do know, though, is money is needed to contribute to project to make them affordable. And so we're in a bit of a holding pattern right now at this point as to what we're going to do with that, because we also have our affordable housing reserve fund as well. So this is a long way of saying we're working on it. We're banking that money, and we will continue to respond to support affordable housing projects, which the city has done with our funds over the last, I guess, 15 years in total. And at this point, the signals that we're being given at all levels is the city will still be responsible or asked to contribute to those components that really contribute to that affordability. Development cost charge payment, offsite work payment, potential planning for infrastructure and offsite, the actual meat and potatoes. So we'll continue at that point, but stay tuned on what the actual affordable housing program does as all of those things mature.
And I think Mr. Garbett might have a report coming forward too about just giving us that historical context of how much from that affordable housing fund has been utilized already. And then again, we have those funds sitting there, which are somewhat opportunistic, waiting for projects to come forward. So because we don't actually build the projects, we're kind of working with folks. But I assume that answered your question, because I'll let you do a follow-up.
Yeah, just in relation to what has been done, there's only two partners that are noted in the brief report. I thought we had a longer list of agencies that we'd collaborated with on, support around development cost charges and such, Transition Society, Dawn to Dawn. I just don't know if that list is as inclusive as it might be, but given that this is a report that goes out into public, if we have more that we've contributed to, I think it'd be useful to state that. Thanks.
I really appreciate that comment, Councillor Helene, for sure. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for coming tonight and providing this report. And it was really thorough. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I had a question just around the work that's being done to bring in and maybe more of a regional participation with the MRDT, and I'm glad to see that work advanced. I know it's been talked about since you guys took over the contract, and I mean, I think you guys are really getting a lot of good work done with the limited contribution that's coming in from just Courtenay. And hopefully that will really incentivize the process. It's now, we've had some proven work with the contract. So I hope that serves us to bring more folks along. So my question around that is, do we have a fairly definitive timeline on where this will be, like a yes, no? I'm sure you have an engagement process outlined, and I'm wondering at what point we'll hear back from those potential participants as to whether or not they want to join in this service, or if it will continue to have it as a Courtenay service.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And thank you for acknowledging the work that we've done to date. Lisa with the CVRD, as well as Callum from our team, have been working with the CAOs on the timeline. Of course, like I said, the engagement does begin. We've got this workshop coming up, and we've already done a lot of engagement through the 10-year tourism strategy plan, which is awesome because that helps fast track this process a little bit. As far as timeline goes, we are looking at the new year for getting support. So once we really start, sharing the plan and seeing, what the reactions are to that, then we'll have a better idea where we've got support or where we maybe need to make some adjustments in order to get support from other communities or other areas. Yeah, so probably more have a better idea early in the new year.
And my follow-up on that is, so the 2 to 3% change, would that be considered as part of it, or would that be done afterwards? I mean, I assume that you've probably had some engagement with the current participants, and I would imagine there was support around that to begin with. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be in your slides. So is it bringing everyone in at 3%, or is it bringing everyone in and then looking at that like a new plan on the revenue?
Yeah, so the 3% definitely we have heard some support for doing 3% in the engagement that we've done to date. We're looking to get an idea and a pulse check on the community through our other engagements to see if that if the other opinions align with that. 3% would also align with what the majority of communities on Vancouver Island are doing. So it allows us to have a little bit of a bigger budget to give us more buying power to enact the actions and the objectives and the goals of the 10-year tourism strategy. It's not a requirement. We don't have to, but we are recommending that as we are starting a new 5-year to just go in strong with the 3%. When I see Jeff's light is up, if he has something to add.
Over to Mr. Garbett.
You should finish. If you're
I'll finish first, yeah. So there has studies have shown, for instance, that there's no effect to consumer buying decisions, whether it's 2 or 3%. So it would just sort of make sense, and that's why we're recommending that. But that being said, if there's opposition to it, either from the municipalities or if we hear opposition through the hoteliers, we can start off our 5 years at 2% and then look at doing 3% 5 years from now. That's an option.
That makes good sense.
Yeah.
I'm looking at
Go
whether
ahead. It's okay.
city manager wants to chime in with something. I had another question that is on a slightly different topic, and it was just looking at what the projected revenues are versus the expenses. Of course, the online platform is of interest to us because we use that for reducing costs on affordable housing projects. And of course, with the changes, we're expecting it to be reduced. And it looks like the line that is associated with it in the projected revenues is $50,000 for next year, which is quite a reduction. But then what I wasn't really quite clear about is in the expenses, it's shown as a $2,000 or $200,000 expense. So why are those not the same? And maybe more to my point is what is the city expecting, the 50 or the 200,000?
Go ahead.
Mr. Legemeyer.
Good eye. So if you look at the staff report, we compare what the OAP revenue was over the past couple of years, and it has very much dropped. So the expected OAP revenue for 26 is $50,000. In the prior years, it was upwards of 230,000. And that's due to the change of the provincial legislation. With regards to the identification of the spending of the OAP, so we've been keeping the OAP funds separate from the MRDT, and that reserve has been building up and building up and building up. So with the Appendix 1.8 identifying some actions, we have to put in matching spending to what we're saying we're trying to do in the Appendix 1.8. So that's finishing off the housing action plan. And from there, we'll have a better understanding of the actual actions to be taken. So the question of, is the revenue 50,000 or 200? Revenues 50,000, the spending is 200. And that reflects prior OAP earnings that have not been spent.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Garbett.
If members of council don't have any other questions, I just wanted to speak to the interaction between our MRDT and the potential for a regional MRDT. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to provide some input. Council may recall when the change in the MRDT happened, where it flowed through the city, and we formed our partnership with the previous name of your company, and done a great job. It's been excellent. We had to move heaven and earth to make that happen. So we also, given the end of our MRDT coming and the conversation happening at the regional level, we have to be extremely mindful of the timeline. So engagement is happening. We actually really probably need to understand if it's going to happen or not, because I think it was 3 months that we re-engaged the MRDT the last time and took it over. Like usually it's many multiple months there. So I think I raised this question at our last administrators meeting, because everybody's projects around the region all happen together. We need to be really crisp on the timeline because the tourism strategy has had some adjustments in the timeline. What's there now? We have the MRDT working together, and then our council will have to determine, where we see this going based on what we hear. Because when the regional MRDT conversation happened at the board, we were invited to and heard that conversation, and so there's a varied opinions both around the actual participants around that point. So we just Adam's area and finance is our conduit to our service provider, who, again, like I said, are doing a great job. We need to be really mindful of what the timeline looks like, because the MRDT is very strongly supported by our community, and so we want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we might have a challenge on our renewal because of what's going to happen in the co-joined or new or partial or whatever it turns out to be at a regional level. So we have it diarized. Adam and I are working together on that, and we'll make sure we keep council informed of where we're headed.
Yeah. So the recommendation has been moving forward, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Garbett, because the conversation about increasing from 2% to 3% and in expanding it in the online platforms first came up about 10 years ago, and so from my perspective, it's been a long time with the hoteliers saying, okay, let's do it, and it seems like there's a lot of momentum. But to the question that Councillor McCollum asked, if it's not done by a specific timeline, are we now stuck waiting for the next iteration, or just those longer periods of time to try to get the actual? Because I think it has to go up for the actual provincial cabinet to make a resolution and all those kinds of things, which is very time consuming. So maybe that's the question too.
Yeah. No, we can totally be flexible. So for instance, through our engagement over the next few weeks and for the remainder of the year, if we get the sense that we're not getting the support in all the areas, we can pull that geographical boundary back in. Like for instance, it might be just one of the municipalities partnering with City of Courtenay. We don't know for sure yet, but in a perfect world, we would be submitting we have to submit early in the new year or by March at the latest, because there is a 6-month review period. And in a perfect world, the province would then adopt our new MRDT plan basically the day after the current one expires, so that there's no gap in collecting that taxes. That's the perfect world scenario. And the province does request that we allow them the 6 months to review. They might come back to us in 1 or 3, but we want to make sure that we're applying by March at the latest.
Yeah. So March plan is submitted, and then basically 6 months after that, we have it. And
and it would be enacted right away as like I said, like a seamless, like the hoteliers wouldn't have to change any of their operations.
Way less stressful than the last time. I remember many phone calls the last time, but to be fair, everybody really worked well together and was really able to move heaven and earth to make it happen. So, but yeah, this sounds certainly a little bit better. We have the motion on the floor. So all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And thank you so much for the report today. And we'll move on to BC Transit. So we've got, it says Kyle Shaw. So, but I see other people as well.
Thank you, through the mayor to council. Just a quick overview here and I'll pass the mic over to Seth Wright, the Senior Manager of Government Relations with BC Transit, to do a presentation. But just to recap, this conversation was introduced to council quite some time ago. Back in April, there was a discussion with respect to the two locations for transit updates in the city of Courtenay, both in South Courtenay and the Downtown Exchange. And through that discussion and dialogue, council provided some pretty pointed feedback. And so we've taken that feedback and worked with BC Transit and our partners at the Comox Valley Regional District to come back with the presentation to here today to speak to those particular items and address some of those aspects that council so hope to desire to see within these facilities. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Seth.
All right, and your mic's on, so.
Thank you, Mayor Wells, and thank you, Mr. Shaw. I do have a presentation. I'm gonna stand here awkwardly until it's queued up.
Do you hope like a PowerPoint?
A PowerPoint, yeah. Okay, great. So thanks so much. Before I dive into the presentation, I'll say that since I last presented to your council, we did go ahead and procure construction tendering for 2 of our exchanges. So you'll notice if you're up by North Island College or downtown Comox, that we have undertaken construction start at both of those exchange properties or exchange locations. The North Island Exchange is moving forward quite well, and I had the opportunity to, I came up a bit earlier this afternoon and had the opportunity to go and look at it. It looks quite grandiose and is quite exceptional. I would say that I wanted to note that the downtown Comox Exchange, in the process of excavation, possible archaeological findings were discovered. And therefore, we had to pivot a little bit in our strategy, and we've been in touch with the archaeological branch and working with the Comox First Nation. We are going through all the permitting processes and working in collaboration to follow the appropriate protocols with regard to that. That means there's a delay. Unfortunately, that means we're eating up some of our project contingency, and we're under fairly tight financial requirements with the project. So we're looking at managing the project a little more aggressively right now in terms of cost. But we're excited to make some progress on those 2 exchanges, and we will be, once we have the permit in hand, we'll be undertaking that work at Comox Exchange to complete that project. I'm going to start by just highlighting the resolution that was brought to you, that I believe starts off the staff report in front of you this afternoon, breaking down some of those pieces. Then I'll identify sort of the work that we've done in collaboration with your city staff on how we've moved these pieces forward. So the resolution direction to your staff and to BC Transit was requesting improved pedestrian street crossings, particularly the downtown Courtenay Exchange, considering opportunities for public art. And the reference in the conversation at that time was largely about First Nations art. You requested consultation with local businesses, which was already part of our engagement strategy and engagement plan, which we've since undertaken, and I can report back on the results of that. You requested support, I think, sort of the from the transit system, which BC Transit has provided in part in terms of the queue jump lanes, which I'll outline in a few slides, and then also discussion of a washroom facility at South Courtenay. We've discussed this with staff. It's addressed in the staff report. I would defer to staff on the washroom conversation, but we did cost it out and look at options with staff, and staff encouraged us to pursue a different recommendation from staff perspective. And then the crosswalk across 8th, which I believe is redundant, but there were crosswalks at both the South Courtenay and the downtown Exchange location. And so we can talk about those in the next few slides. I'll start with the downtown Courtenay location at 8th and England. As you may be aware, the crosswalk is currently located on the east side, so down on the cliff side of England Avenue. And this would require people that are traveling from the Exchange on the courthouse side of England Avenue to travel across 3 legs of the intersection to be able to get to and from the rapid bus stop on the far side of 8th Street. And that was identified as something that was obviously not desirable and would encourage people jaywalking and things like that. So we don't want to encourage that. So we've worked with our design consultants to relocate the crosswalk on the other side of the street. Our consultants have identified, here there's overhead flashers. Previously, we were talking about overhead flashers at this intersection, but since staff identified a preference for RFB, both are acceptable. RFB are just the flashing amber lights beside the crosswalks. So we support that. That's a change since this drawing. So this drawing shows overhead flashers, but that's fine. I'll move on to South Courtenay, where there's a little bit more to discuss. At South Courtenay, with regard to the crosswalk, I would say that I also wanted to highlight that crosswalks weren't included in the original grant application to the feds in the province. So through conversation and through presentation to council, there was a request to look at crosswalks. The original location of the South Courtenay Exchange was further to the south, closer to Anfield Road, between Anfield and the access to the mall. With moving it further north, where there's more space for the Exchange to be fit in, we're moving it quite far from any existing crosswalk. The Anfield crosswalk is obviously quite far removed. And so there's been a lot of discussion between BC Transit and staff and our consultants on location of crosswalk. We identified this initially as our preferred location, and this remains BC Transit's preferred location. Your staff are presenting an alternate option. BC Transit has it within our project budget, feels comfortable undertaking this possibility of RFB crossing with a refuge island in the middle, which is provided because the median is on the side of the intersection. This is a fairly cost-effective approach. Your staff are recommending a slightly different approach, which is on the north leg, which we understand is for future proofing. I can defer to them to speak to the rationale. BC Transit is supportive if the city can contribute the difference between the cost of the south leg RFB and the north leg half signal crossing, which provides a full red light signalization for pedestrians. The cost difference is effectively around $200,000 from our Class D cost estimates from our engineers. In September, we had a really lovely meeting with representatives of the Comox First Nation about public art opportunities, and she provided a bit of a menu of options in terms of what we could do to incorporate public art into the downtown Courtenay Exchange. We were excited about this opportunity due to the financial variability of managing a complex 5 or 7 part project right now in this moment. We decided it would be most appropriate to revisit this at a later stage in the project when we have some of the variable financials worked out in a sense of how much money we can allocate. But we do have confidence that it's no problem to incorporate Comox art from the Comox First Nation in the project. Just the scale of the art is the question that we will work out as we proceed with the project. With regard to engagement with local businesses and residents in proximity to the 2 exchanges, we had staff at the CVRD here send out letters and postcards that BC Transit worked with design consultants to develop. We ultimately sent out 115 letters in the vicinity of the South Courtenay Exchange and 197 postcards for that same exchange. Pardon me. For the downtown Courtenay Exchange, we sent out 27 letters and 87 postcards. To those many letters and postcards we sent out, we received absolutely no response. We have reached out with a personal touch to the immediate stakeholders in the vicinity of the respective exchanges. So we've had several conversations with the owner of Smart Centers. We've had some conversations with the Old Farm Market. We've received, our project manager went and presented to the downtown Courtenay BIA and received this letter of support, quite enthusiastic support. So all that is to say that we've done our darndest to engage with the community, and we feel pretty confident that there's not a lot of concerns out there, that there's a general level of support from the community to the exchange projects. We also have these transit priority measures, which are at Comox Road and the Old Island Highway, and at Ryan Road and the Old Island Highway to speed up buses moving through those areas, which sometimes are congested. This was identified in the Urban Systems Report now about 5 years ago. What was required is the city has signalization cabinets at those 2 intersections that required some modernization and upgrades to be able to enable the next phase of consideration to put in this traffic signal. We donated or contributed $15,000 to the Ryan Road cabinet and have held off for the current time on Comox Road because there's still further conversation required due to the geometry of the intersection. There's some considerations that still need to be worked out from a design and engineering perspective as to sort of the value and function and orientation and design of how that works out. And so we've held off on that, but we do have that money allocated if we're able to sort those details out. In terms of our next steps, we'll be working through in the next couple of months the detailed design process with our consultants. We'll be developing a maintenance agreement with the city. We'll schedule in construction. We're really hoping to get our construction tender out early in the new year in January or February so we can get a really good start on construction. We're currently at 60% with both exchanges and so need to move forward to 100% in the next couple of months. We're going to be facilitating construction prior to and during construction with the just adjacent landowners. And ultimately we're excited to invite you out to cut a ribbon or hold the golden shovel, some such thing. Happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Really appreciate the presentation today. And and I guess one of the questions, the $200,000 question, I suppose, is the position and location of the lights of some sort, depending on which one. So I don't know who the best person is to ask that question of, but does city staff obviously has put forward a recommendation, but just wondering, $200,000 is an amount, but I don't know if there's like any thoughts of grant funding or anything else, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, consideration for grant funding in the forward. We do have partnership and relationships with ICBC, so there's a potential for pedestrian improvements grant funding in that scenario. There's obviously no commitments, and I'm not making that commitment on behalf of them, but we would certainly seek those avenues in terms of pedestrian movements. The BCAT, BC Active Transportation grant funding for 2025 was put on pause. So this wouldn't necessarily fit into that category. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a potential for 2026, as we do like to stretch the boundaries that they imagine to be active transportation travel projects. So there are those opportunities for sure. Really the impotence behind the recommendation that differs between staff and that of BC Transit is both crossings obviously meet the mark with respect to how they've been constructed within the parameters of safety, one being a refuge and the other one being a full half signal. The city's perspective on this is really future-proofing this corridor. The corridor currently consists of an average daily usage of around 13,000. The trigger beyond that would be 15. With our anticipated growth, we've been complimented quite regularly on the amount of growth we've seen in our community. We anticipate that travel pattern to increase quite substantially fairly soon. And as well as being an arterial corridor, and with the average speeds within the corridor being above 60 kilometers an hour on an otherwise posted 50, as there are concerns with the width of road and future-proofing that in terms of an arterial forecast. So that's the difference in recommendation. And so as Seth articulated, there's a degree of scrutiny on the budget right now with respect to them. And so they look to the city to, if there is a desire to go above and beyond and future-proof this today, that the costs associated with the difference within the proposed RRFB from BC Transit and the city would be the city would pick up the difference in terms of cost.
Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that sounds somewhat inevitable that works will be required in the future. So rather than wait, get it done while we're doing the other stuff.
Correct.
And my assumption is the price won't go down in the future.
We've learned that lesson, but it's a great assumption.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Shaw. Appreciate it. I do see we have some more questions. I'll pass it over to Councilor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. My question was just around the crossing improvements that were requested around the 8th Street exchange. When it was discussed last time, as you pointed out, there was a concern raised that if you're on one corner, you could potentially need to cross 3 times. But even from what you said in your presentation and the drawings that have been included in the report, it appears that the recommendation is to remove one crosswalk and simply move it to the other side of the intersection. And I'm trying to understand why we would choose to go that way rather than leaving in our existing crossing and simply add one where we're putting in the transit exchange.
Certainly. Through the mayor, I'm not an engineer, but this is an engineering question, but I asked the question to our engineers and our engineers indicated that to have crossing on all 4 sides would necessitate a full pedestrian traffic light signal, which is, I think, in the realm of $300,000 ballpark, which is well beyond the financial capacity of the project. As I said, crossing improvements weren't considered as within the scope of the original grant application, and as such, we've tried to exercise as much discretion as we can, but we're a little bit up against a wall financially in terms of being able to achieve everything. So my understanding is that to achieve crossings on all 4 sides would necessitate a full signalization of the intersection. We don't have the budget for that. Not sure it's necessitated other than pedestrian convenience of being able to cross in every direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, lots of intersections, I guess they have stop signs instead of traffic lights in and around downtown. Yeah, I mean, without having this exchange in place, it's hard to say which side of the street has more pedestrians. When the direction was given, it was in addressing the fact that there would be pedestrians on both the east and the west side of this. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's another solution there. I mean, inevitably, there are many people that work on England. There's quite a lot of service buildings, and I imagine that they access downtown on an existing crosswalk. And I'm not sure, you know, how that's received, removing a piece of infrastructure and putting it to the other side. Although I do think it does make, if we're only going to have one crossing, that it makes sense that it would align with the transit stops. But I do wonder if there's another way to address that. Other than a signalized light, I agree that a $300,000 crosswalk is a lot of money for pedestrian convenience, but yeah, it seems like a complicated solution to the problem. I do have another question, but maybe I'll just leave it, my comments there. I'm not sure if there's anything else to add. Yeah. It's okay. I'll jump back in.
All right, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, my question is about 31st Street, and then I'll ask about 8th as well, but isn't there a crosswalk at 31st? Like, I thought there was a whole set of lights there. Maybe I'm just confused about what 31st is.
If I may, as councillor, I think you're thinking of Anfield. So just up, and Seth spoke to Anfield. It's quite a distance away.
Oh, it's that little dead end.
About halfway,
right.
halfway between the Parkway and
Yeah, it's that little dead end that goes.
31st is relatively in the middle between 29th and Anfield.
Is the idea with the 31st, like, I don't remember asking for the 31st crosswalk. Maybe it was some other council member. I mean, obviously we might have put it in our motion, but I guess the expectation is that there'll be a lot of foot traffic coming up 31st. Is that the idea? Accessing the bus stop
trail. Yeah. Connection to the Riverway Trail.
Yeah. I struggle to see it, and at $200,000, I don't know if it's worthwhile. I don't know how other council members are. Do you have any insight into, I mean, you're not really local, but like what kind of traffic people are going to be walking? Obviously, if they want to go to the ocean side, they can go either direction and catch a crosswalk. And there's only like 2 complexes in that area, I believe. So I don't know that I'm in favor of spending the money on that particular crosswalk. The other question I had was around the one on England, and I'm confused about why we don't have 2 crosswalks either. I mean, I've seen intersections with no stop signs, and there's not a lot of confusion. People just don't run over other people and run into cars. So what would be the problem with having 2 crosswalks going and drivers having to contend with paying attention twice? I mean, maybe that's a question for you, Kyle, if the engineers are vehemently against us just adding it in and leaving the other one.
It would be against engineering standards to have 2 crosswalks without always stops on that particular intersection. Always stops would be the alternative to a signalized intersection, but an always stop in proximity to an otherwise signalized intersection creates complications in and of itself in terms of stacking. So a complete warrant evaluation and analysis would have to be undertaken to understand what the implications are and the likelihood of success in that particular location. And those things are currently unknown.
Yeah, and an always stop doesn't make any sense to me either, because it would slow up traffic too much. But I mean, having two crosswalks going, as a driver, I would see them both going. I would see people walking, and I would not run over them. But I don't really get what the problem is. Yeah, you've just been told like it's not possible.
We would defer to tax standard guidelines in terms of warrant criteria and what the industry standards are in terms of expectation with respect to engineered standards for traffic management. There was a similar one, if you consider, in the valley in Comox Ave, downtown near the mall, and it was removed within the last 2 years or so because it also added a degree of complexity to the intersection that was otherwise unnecessary.
Okay, well, I disagree. I think complexity breeds intelligence, but I'll defer to the engineers. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, my question also kind of relates to this. And I guess I know that engineering standards are against that, and I'm not sure, are we legally bound by engineering standards? We go to like engineering jail if we choose not to do that, which sounds like a scary but well-organized place, I would imagine. But I guess I'm wondering if we were to do both, then like the reason I think this is that the downtown and the grocery store, the Shoppers Drug Mart, the bulk of our downtown businesses are all on the east side of England going towards Cliff. So there's a lot of things that cause people to be wanting to be crossing. Like if you're going from the largest grocery store downtown to the largest drugstore downtown, you will cross on the east side, in which case you have to do 3 legs of that. I don't know if we've done any some pedestrian flow studies, but I do see a logic to having a crosswalk on the same corner as the like on the west side, because the transit exchange is there. But I would really preferred if we could somehow find a way of having 2, and if we are having one, I'd like to think very seriously about which corner it should be on, given again the bulk of activity in downtown is on the east side. So I'm not sure how we go about seeing if we can break engineering laws or determine which is the better side to have it on based upon individual flows here.
Sure. I do appreciate the commentary and the questions, and hopefully no one at the end of today will be going to jail as a result of the decisions we make. However, there are engineering standards, there are practices, there are professionals that provide an oversight and a review of these, and they ultimately take on professional responsibility as a result of the designs that they implement, and then thus we construct on their behalf. And so they become obligated in terms of providing what is best in terms of those practices based on years of physical data that exist within the standard metric of evaluation from a TAC standard guideline on a national level and also on a provincial level. So there's a degree of personal liability. And so one question might be, can we break the laws? The other one is, could we find someone that would actually put their stamp on it and then stand behind it? The likelihood of that happening is very, very low. Okay. So I would suggest that there are opportunities to do what you've described, and those are costly opportunities in terms of full signalization in that particular corridor would be the next step. We could step back from this and look at traffic patterns with respect to pedestrian mobility. The impact of this would be a bit of an analysis. It would delay the work that is in front of us today with BC Transit, because we'd have to go back and look at patterns and movement within pedestrian world, as well as the need and the demand that this facility would then pick up. As well as where the movements within the intersection, the priority movements within the intersection currently exist, and where we anticipate them to exist with the addition of the transit buses. So there's a multitude of complicated factors that go into that. And the work that to date has been done is through that lens of engineering standards, and is one that has been presented as a tangible option that could be constructed to step away from that and to add things that might add complexity and otherwise not be tangible in terms of this would be something we could do, but would take quite some time and delay the project.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Garvin?
Yeah, thanks. Sort of comprehensive answer from Mr. Shaw. Ultimately, if we don't follow standards or prescribed standards or engineering standards, we'd have to look at our risk lens there, and we would respond through a signage or some component related to manage that risk. That's our usual and regular response if we're following some alternative per council's direction.
Yeah, Seth.
I would highlight, and it pains me a little bit to say this, but I would highlight that BC Transit has an engineer on record who has indicated what their interpretation of the TAC manual at both intersections, and it would be very problematic for BC Transit to shop around for an engineer that would be willing to put their stamp and seal on something, and BC Transit's ultimately the authority delivering this project. So we would love to get strategic alignment on these pieces and understand that pedestrian accessibility is a key priority, and I myself personally, as someone that grew up shopping at the Safeway where the drugstore is, appreciate the value of the convenience of the crosswalk on that side of the street, and did push the engineers quite hard on this point. So I think there was a point that was made earlier with regard to 31st Street, which I would say that that's a really long stretch of road without a crosswalk. And while 31st Street is a short street, it has some medium density stratas in that area, and also that critical connection to the active transportation corridor on the estuary that we considered that it provides some value and enough value to avoid jaywalking across a section of what effectively, from a safety perspective, feels more like a highway than a municipal road. That a crosswalk was appropriate there, and support a crosswalk and consider either the RFB option or the full half signal option that the city would contribute to be more acceptable options for installing good infrastructure that will provide value to the city in the long run.
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate that. And even bicycles, besides the pedestrians, bicycle traffic along that Riverway Trail, definitely, and then people trying to get across. So yeah, totally get where that might have come from. Next, we have Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I maybe want to shift to the other proposed crossing, and I do support the recommendation of going with a higher or more protective piece of infrastructure when it comes to that crossing, just given how wide that road is and the speed of traffic along there. People do move like it's a highway, and some of the traffic is in fact coming off the highway. My question, and I'm in favor of the way that we've proposed to address it, picking up the cost differential and returning back to the service to see if there is an interest in supporting this piece of improved safety. My question was just why, when we go to a proper signalized light, is the suggestion to move it to the farther side of the intersection from the exchange versus what was suggested when we were looking at the flasher. I just wasn't sure why it was different that way.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So again, really it's about future proofing, so that infrastructure being a half signal has the potential in the future to become a full signal if warranted and required, and would not require a pickup and removal or move of that asset. You'd be able to add additional transverse markings within the intersection to support what would be a full intersection.
Okay, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. So for vehicles coming out of 31st Street, yeah, okay. That makes good sense to me. And then just to loop back to the discussion on the downtown crossing, I think it's pretty difficult to really project what side of that intersection is going to have more need for a pedestrian crossing, given that we don't really know how pedestrians are going to be using that until we actually have the transit exchange moved. So I don't really want to weigh in that one's better than the other at this point. And I think we're just going to have to recognize that this is a trade-off. So hearing that there's not really a way around this other than to put in a light, I'm okay with what's here. I don't think it's optimal, but sometimes that's just not the way. That's not an option. So I'm happy with what's in the report and where we've landed on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And I did notice we have a light on this side of the room, so I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, just a comment in terms of the conversation around Cliff. I absolutely think as much safety as we can get along Cliff, the better. I travel that corridor regularly, and every single day I see somebody dash across, and I don't rely on people driving cars to stop. So I think we need to adhere to the standards. I think they're there for a reason, and it is like a highway there. And I think I'm in support of the recommendations. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Morin and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. So I'm hearing some great arguments for 31st, and I'm happy to support either the RFP or the lights, although I think the lights, actually, they don't sound that expensive considering the distance, but yeah, kind of feeling like we should be saving some money. So I'll see where council lands on that. But on 8th in England, I'm having a really hard time thinking about removing what is a well-used crosswalk and shifting it over. I mean, currently it's most of the traffic is probably going on that side of the street with two major commercial businesses on either side. So I think it might actually be better just to leave it alone for now and try and find a way to do something on the other street, whether it's a light, like a pedestrian controlled light, which I think is what we're contemplating, like what they use in Vancouver on all the big roads. And the other thought I came up with is around like all unmarked intersections are crosswalks technically by law. Like I think you're technically allowed to cross. I don't know how that plays out. So it does seem strange to me that a lower level of safety somehow is better than putting in the flasher. And it strikes me as something of a resistance to take responsibility or to have some sort of risk associated with the municipality or an engineer or whatever. So that's where I sit with that. And you know, if this recommendation gets moved, which I suspect it will, I think I'm really interested in changing it so that we don't move ahead with adding or like pulling out our existing crosswalk on 8th Street at England. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councillor Frisch. So it looks like we may have come to the end of our clarification questions. There is a motion in front. There's been discussion of potential massaging. It's been moved, been seconded. So yeah, it's been moved and seconded. Yeah. Motion that is on the screen is on the floor right now. And Councillor Frisch, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I'm interested in moving an amendment to the motion. I'm just trying to see, does it go further down than that? Or is that it? I'll just bring it up on mine. Yeah, does that sound reasonable if we amend it to remove the second?
That starts with the installation of a pedestrian half signal.
Yeah. The installation of a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at the west leg of 8th Street and England Avenue as part of the downtown Courtenay exchange. Just have that removed for now and tackle that. I don't know if we need a subsequent motion to look into that more or to
you wanting
keep
to
an eye on it.
sever it or? Do you want to put your microphone on?
Depends how the rest of council feels about it. We could sever it so you're voting on that part separately. If everybody is in agreement about removing that part, we could call it a friendly amendment, or we could call it an actual amendment, in which case we need a seconder.
Okay, and it's been moved and seconded. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? And is it clear what the amendment is? Okay.
So that recommendation of that beacon is also part of the engineering standards or not? That's just yeah, I'm just trying to get clear.
So maybe I'll jump on that if I may. So through the mayor to Councillor Morin. So I think
Street.
What we're trying to accomplish is the removal of the rectangular rapid flashing beacon on the west leg of 8th and England Ave as part of the downtown exchange, and in turn retain the existing crossing at its existing location.
So would that go against any engineering standards? If we did that?
There's already one that's there.
Okay.
It's warranted.
So that's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
If I may, it would be helpful in terms of the resolution if it were to just suggest that we're retaining the existing infrastructure in its current location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor McCollum, do you want to do that? Okay, Councillor Frisch. Councillor Moore. Just what Mr. Shaw was saying.
Yeah, that was the intent of the motion.
Councillor Moore, or which Councillor Cole Hamilton. Sorry, he's not in.
I didn't mean to sneak in, but I mean, I think what Kyle is saying is just what's implicit in this motion is that when we install one, we would be removing the other, but the resolution doesn't actually say that we'd be removing one. But I think for clarity, I think that the addition suggested by Director Shaw would be useful to make it completely clear. But
Yes.
And I'll look to our clerk just to make sure.
I'm working on trying to get it
Yes.
in front of you, but I might be
Yep.
too slow for your vote.
No. We'll take the time. There's no sense rushing this. We want to make sure that it's absolutely crystal clear what we're asking to be removed from the resolution and what's being asked not to be removed in actual property. Yeah, Councillor Frisch.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is the work of removing the crosswalk and installing the RRFB, was that at the cost of BC Transit or the service? Does that provide any savings for you that you may wish to kick back and for this other crossing? I understand these flashing lights are quite inexpensive, but yeah, I don't know if you want to wheel and deal on the floor, but do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't think I'm in a position to be able to make any commitments on the budget of the project. I think that based on the conversations we've had internally, we'd be hard pressed to contribute to the difference to further bridging that difference between at 31st Street towards the half signal. Ultimately, some of our leadership at BC Transit's supportive of the RFB, or even not supportive of funding a crossing either. But as the people that work on the project, we have advocated when heard directly from your staff who have advocated strongly for a more significant crossing at 31st. So we'd be reluctant to be able to contribute more. But yes, that does constitute a savings, not having to relocate. If there was requirement for freshening up the paint or anything with the current configuration, that would be perfectly fine and acceptable. It's a trade-off with whether you're crossing 3 legs of an intersection or 2, or depends where you're at and where you're going, obviously. But it made sense when we heard it on April 2nd from council, and we thought, okay, well, the priority is for transit to be able to increase the accessibility to other bus stops, between bus stops for people transferring from a bus, but I understand also where the key destinations are in town. So if we were to keep the current crosswalk configuration, that's really your discretion. It's your infrastructure.
Okay, well, if it passes, you're welcome.
And Councillor Frisch, before you turn your mic off, if you could just confirm what you see on the screen is what you intended.
Sorry, so I don't know if I can read that. Just
Very small.
that is correct.
And really, it's the highlighted part. Everything else is as presented in the highlighted part of the redaction and then the addition.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Frisch, for confirming that. No, and I have Councillor Hillian, I believe, is going to speak to the amendment.
Yeah, if I can just get clear about this. What we're concerned about is the elimination of the crosswalk on the east side of 8th Street in England. But we don't want any sort of a flashing beacon there. We have one already?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's why we're eliminating
Between
that
basically Waypoint and the parking lot of the
Right.
grocery store.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense now, and I 100% support it. I don't think it's a big problem for people to get off the bus and cross over wherever they go this way and then that way. But I do think I agree with all the other comments that have been made about the pedestrian traffic. You know, I've lived here for 47 years. I recall driving down that road many, many times. I recall walking across it many, many times, including when I worked in the actual courthouse. And I think that keeping the crosswalk where it is makes really good sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of muscle memory out there. Awesome. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to say, yeah, I think people are creatures of habit. They're used to seeing that crossing. I think there would be more lack of understanding of what we've done and why it was done, and more resistance to it, to trying to pick up new habits if we were to make the switch. So I think people probably not so much notice the lack of one on the west side, but if we were to move to one on the east side, it would be, what were you thinking? And I'd agree with those people. So that's why I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
All right. So voting on the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And the motion as amended, all those in favor? And motion carries. Fantastic. All right. We are at 6:17. And so we'll call a dinner break and we'll be back here in we say that, but we're never it's like herding cats. I'll say 6:35. That splits the difference. I think almost everybody's in here. All right. Here we go. We're going to go on to item 5.5.1, Parks and Rec Advisory Commission recommendations, continuation of free public admission to the outdoor pool. And I'll maybe pass it over to Ms. Saunders.
Thank you through the mayor to council. The report before you is to present a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission of their October 16th meeting, where the committee recommended that the city of Courtenay continue with free swim admissions in 2026, as was implemented in 2025. As per the report and the outdoor pool 2025 season highlights, the pool continues to experience increased attendance with over 18,000 visits in 2025, an increase of 18% over the previous season. The report also outlines that staff support the recommendation of the committee, but actually recommend that it be extended to direct staff to include free public admissions funded by gaming into the financial plan for the next 2 years or until such time as the pool is closed for repair, renovation, or replacement. And I can take any questions.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thanks, Ms. Saunders. And just I think a big kudos to staff, and I think it went over quite well last year, and so really glad to see it come forward again. Next, we have the positive ticketing program, and also Ms. Saunders.
Yep. So through the mayor to council, the report is seeking approval from council to participate in a positive ticket program with the RCMP in partnership with the town of Comox, Village of Cumberland, and Comox Valley Regional District. The positive ticket program is a proactive initiative started actually in Richmond, BC in 2021, whereby police issue positive tickets to young people to recognize and reward positive behavior in the community with the intention of empowering and valuing the contributions of youth, supporting positive behaviors in young people, and building relationships between youth and police that are based on positive interactions. The additional benefit of Courtenay Recreation participating in this program is that it invites youth from across our community to attend recreation facilities, including the Link Youth Center, resulting in hopefully new youth accessing our services and building relationships with staff. As per the report, the recommendation is that we participate in this initiative as a part of a regional group with the other recreation departments. The impact of participating regionally is that when a recreation ticket is issued, it can be used at any recreation facility for drop-in activities, thereby reducing barriers for youth participation in the program, not having police having to figure out which location they'd want a ticket to, or youth having to worry about where their friends want to be or what activities might be happening. While drop-in rates for youth at Courtenay Recreation range from $2.50 to $4.50, this program is not expected to incur additional direct costs, as admissions will be to already existing drop-in programs that are already staffed. And we expect regionally to evaluate at the end of a year and report back on results from the program.
So been moved in second. Any questions or comments? I see none. Again, thanks to staff for bringing this forward, and all those in favor. And motion carries. And we'll move on to Canada Cultural Spaces Fund Grant application for the facility needs and feasibility assessment. And back to Ms. Saunders.
Through the mayor to council, this reports to request council's endorsement of a grant application to the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund through the Department of Canadian Heritage for matching project funding to complete a cultural facilities needs and feasibility assessment. Completion of a cultural facilities needs assessment is a recommendation in the strategic cultural plan as the next step following the cultural facilities options analysis that was completed, and a key action towards the completion of a cultural facilities capital plan. The city's financial plan currently includes $75,000 to complete a facilities needs assessment. In discussion with our cultural partners and based on staff experience, it's recommended that we complete a single feasibility and needs assessment that encompasses our 3 cultural facilities, the Center for the Arts, the museum, and the Sid Williams Theatre. This will enable not just prioritization within each building, but also between the cultural facilities, so as to provide the city with a prioritized strategy for cultural facility investments across the portfolio. To conduct this scope of work, staff received estimates from experienced consultants, which confirm that the scope of work proposed will cost approximately $200,000. As such, it's recommended that the city include this cost in the financial plan for 2026 with $100,000 funded by the grant and $100,000 funded by the city, representing a $25,000 increase in the budget. And I'm happy to take any question.
Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the report. I'm in support of the recommendation. I'm curious whether, I know this is focusing on our facilities, but there has been a lot of conversation around facilities in general regionally. And I just wondered if this assessment would include any gathering any regional information at all, not necessarily to I'm just wondering if, I know you're in contact with the other staff in Comox, Cumberland, et cetera, regional district, but I just think I'm hoping that there can be a more of a regional lens put on to facilities in general, and just wondered if that would be a consideration in this assessment.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Morin. The scope of this assessment would be limited to the Art Gallery Museum, the Center for the Arts, the museum, and the Sid Williams Theatre, and would not take into consideration regional needs. What it will include is, excuse me, looking at the recommendations and findings from the cultural facilities options analysis that was in our cultural plan. And that did have some regional considerations. The Center for the Arts is an example, but that was something that was also identified as a visionary and regional project.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, I think, regional information there, but this will be focused on the 3 cultural facilities. Each of those facilities, as many councillors are aware, have their own desired capital improvements and plans. Sometimes those are in competition with each other, and we don't have at this time a way to prioritize which capital projects to proceed with, nor an understanding of how feasible and expensive each project is. So this work is really focused on looking at the capital projects for each facility and how they could meet some of the needs identified through the strategic cultural plan. But we also know there's other facility needs that were identified for other buildings, such as the Philberg or their Native Sons Hall, and those are outside the scope of this work too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. Did you have another question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say thanks for the report, and I think it's good value. It sounded like we already want to do the work, and at only 25,000 more. I'm happy to support the application, so I'll move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the Vancouver Island Regional Library 2026 appointments. And we'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Unless they say otherwise, I move that council appoint Councillor Morin to the board of the library and Councillor McCollum as alternate.
All right. Do you, Councillor Morin and Councillor McCollum, allow your names to stand? Okay, fantastic. If this has been seconded, all those in favor, or did you want, yeah, all those in favor, sorry. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Congratulations. I don't know if we clap. Sometimes we clap when people are appointed, but yeah, I do appreciate. Yeah. Okay, but this may count towards your council report. But
Yeah, actually, I probably could have saved it. I just wanted to say that, I've taken over from Councillor Cole Hamilton, and I feel like still sort of getting my feet wet with the work that, but there are some really great things happening. I'm hoping to bring a more fulsome report, in the next couple meetings to let people know what's going on. yeah, some good stuff has been happening with the board overall. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate that. And we took the vote, so we're good on that. And so we'll move into the electric vehicle charging stations update. Almost feels like this could have been earlier when we were talking about all the other things, but I'll pass it over to Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through yourself to council, just a quick briefing note with respect to the public EV charging stations that have been distributed across our community. A dual head station in the downtown core, a single head at City Hall, and another dual station at the Lewis Center. There were some grand assumptions, and I think take a nod from Janine with respect to her presentation. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for articulating some of the connections. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to electric charging. We anticipated a high volume of usage in these particular locations. We were quite ambitious, and I think rightfully so. We haven't realized quite that type of usage, but the usage has been consistent, especially in the downtown core. Downtown core at 6th Street being the highest usage out of the 3 stations, but seeing consistent use throughout, which is great to see within the community. So just a reevaluation of the metrics with respect to cost assumptions with this report or this briefing note, and just kind of standing tall on where we are in terms of recommended for charging fees with respect to this, and hope to bring back some additional information in years to come as these continue to succeed within our community.
All right, thanks. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It was nice to see this coming back and just understanding how our charging stations are being used and whether or not there's a cost to the city or a bit of revenue being generated. So overall, I think it's a good news report. We don't need to increase the fees, and our costs are being covered, and there's probably some money there for expansion at some point if things continue as they have been. My comment for looking forward is whether or not there's data available for how frequently both sides of the chargers are being used. Especially because these are a slower type of charger. It's really like the infrastructure is most useful if it's generally has availability. And so I think it should be flagged or tracked in some way when there is no availability for chargers, and that should maybe drive some decision making about adding more rather than just how much it's used, how much it's completely in use is probably a useful thing for us to understand as we kind of roll this out in different places. So just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is great feedback. Usage data in terms of that would be a great determining factor whether or not the infrastructure in its current location needs to be expanded or it currently meets the needs within that particular area. So great feedback. Thank you for that.
Mr. Garvin. Oh, and I was going to comment because there is a slide in the report. So for those that are watching this online, I definitely take a look at that so you can sort of see what I think really articulates the conversation we're having right now around usage versus revenue and those kinds of things. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Similar thoughts along the lines of the cost. I think they're 6.6 kilowatt per hour supply, except when they're split. If someone else shows up, I think you get half. Are those chargers set up that way?
No, not always the case. Actually, there's in best case scenario under most optimistic opportunities for charging based on power, you can get up to 7.2 kilowatts per head per station. And so that's what the metric is based on in terms of the amount of power that's been consumed in the particular locations. And so it's just about how they've been wired and how they've been figured. So there's enough power at the particular station, if it is a dual head, to support both heads facilitating the 7.2 kilowatts. And I believe that was a question when we originally brought these forward. There was some uncertainty as to whether or not the power consumption would be split as it went through 2. And we understand it's based on the grid availability and draw within the system, and then contribute to how they're wired in parallel or in series.
Right. And so it's not split. Well, that's good because it makes it a really expensive charger if it does get cut in half. It's already a little bit expensive, but I think it's, especially since you get priority parking, it's quite nice. Thanks.
Says the guy with the electric truck, right? Yeah. All right, it's been moved and seconded on receipt, and I think the other thing that didn't exist 5-10 years ago is the amount of other chargers in our community, and the fact that quite a lot of the gas stations actually have electric chargers now as well. So just seeing that uptick, not just from a municipal level, but from the private sector as well, is great to see. So with that, just for a receipt, we'll do that unanimously, and we'll move into council reports, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton, Councillor Frisch, Councillor Hillian, Councillor Zolliker's not here, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin. And I'll mention a few things, starting with today. There was the Bunny's Brown Bag Lunch, and just to really celebrate the fact that Betty Tate and Karen McKinnon did win the Bunny Shannon annual award, two amazing community members. Bunny was also a very amazing community person, and just to really celebrate those that are making our community a better place. Going back to this weekend, we did have our 50th telethon at the Child Development Society that raised $133,000 from our community. Again, just outstanding numbers considering the uncertainty that a lot of people are in, and all of those dollars goes towards kids in our community for inclusive and different kinds of things for all sorts of folks that have challenges. And when I say kids, there's actually people, they're working with young adults and adults now as well. So it's just, even though they are the Child Development Society. Last week, I attended the BIA conference in Nanaimo, basically the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. Again, great conference with lots of things happening, and great discussions. And then just very recently, we had our ribbon cuttings for McPhee Meadows and Lake Trail Multi-Use Path. And I think, again, two amazing projects. So huge thanks to our staff and the contractors that brought these to fruition. And they are now there for our community to enjoy. And with that, do we have another in camera? Do we? Yeah, we should do the.
And then 1A, C, and I.
So yeah, thanks. So it's been moved and seconded for 90 A, C, and I. And I don't see any questions. So all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries, and we are in camera.